Julie would like to greet you and everyone today. Julie would like to invite you and Julie to learn and analyze a topic that is difficult for Western sanctions pressure to defeat the Russian economy. Let's not let you and your friends wait too long. Let's find out and analyze together. Western sanctions pressure is unlikely to knock down the Russian economy. Sanctions so far have not been able to defeat the Russian economy, as Moscow maintains large revenues from exports, while Western policies still have many loopholes. President Vladimir Putin announced on September 18 that the Russian economy has fully recovered after enduring unprecedented sanctions pressure from the West. It can be said that the recovery phase of the Russian economy has been completed. We have withstood external pressure, with relentless sanctions from Western leaders and a number of unfriendly countries, he said when attending a meeting on the draft federal budget for the 2024-2025 period. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) and World Bank (WB) have predicted that Russia's GDP will decline this year. However, in a report published in August, these two organizations raised their forecast for the Russian economy, stating that the country's GDP will grow by 1.2% and could reach 2.5–2.8% at the end of the year. Russian consumer demand and manufacturing also recorded good growth despite sanctions, underpinned by strong trade and industrial production, as well as higher than expected energy revenues. Customers pay at a market in the Russian city of Omsk in 2021. Photo. Reuters. According to the August Global Wealth Report of the Union Bank of Switzerland (UBS), in 2022, Russians increased their assets by $600 billion, while the US and its European allies lost trillions of dollars. The number of Russian millionaires also increased by about 56,000 people, to 408,000 during this period. The number of Russia's super-rich or those with a net worth of more than $50 million increased by more than 4,500. Meanwhile, about 1 million people will no longer be millionaires in the US by the end of 2022, the report said. During this period, the U.S. economy lost $5.9 trillion United States dollars. However, the U.S. still accounts for 50% of the total number of millionaires globally. This information may disappoint Western policymakers, who believed that their unprecedented series of drastic sanctions would cripple Russia's economy, dealing a blow to its finances. Richest tycoon in the country, as well as reducing Moscow's revenue for the campaign in Ukraine. In the report, UBS said Russia is among the few countries that tend to increase wealth creation in 2022, even though this is the period when Russia has to devote resources to the war in Ukraine. According to Janis Kluge, senior expert at the German Institute for Security and International Affairs (SWP), headquartered in Berlin, Moscow can rely on billions of dollars in export revenue to continue supplementing its budget in the coming years. Next year. In the first half of 2023, Russia earned more than $200 billion United States dollars from energy exports, more than enough to meet import needs. Even if the G7 oil price ceiling measures with Russia are effective, Moscow can still achieve export revenue of about $400 billion United States dollars per year, Kluge said. As long as the global oil market remains tight on supply, the West has little room to act. It will take a more severe global economic recession to change that. Russian industry remains dependent on Western technology. But despite sanctions, the country is still able to purchase many important components needed to produce weapons, by importing through third parties. Moscow seems to have determined that its current goal is to quickly increase production capacity. Finding machinery to assemble new production lines is more difficult due to sanctions, but production is not slowing down due to a general lack of components or raw materials, Kluge noted. In the international arena, the West's efforts to isolate Russia did not meet expectations, when many developing countries objected to preventing Russia from participating in global forums. Interest in diplomatic forums involving Russia, such as BRICS, has increased. Even if only symbolic, this significantly limits Western efforts to separate Russia, Kluge commented. Russia also receives economic support from many sides. While Beijing strengthens technological cooperation with Moscow, Saudi Arabia's decision to cut oil production provides timely leverage for Russia, helping it keep its oil revenues high despite sanctions. According to Yuri Fedorov, military expert and professor at Prague University, Czech Republic, the West should not exaggerate the impact of sanctions on the Russian economy. President Putin has enough money to continue hostilities for several more years, and most Russians are mentally prepared for that, he said. Another question is how tough the sanctions are aimed at preventing the supply of military, dual-use products or microelectronic components to Russia, Fedorov said. This is quite a weak point in Western policy, because we all know that through gray zones, Russia will still make money. I think the West needs to be concerned about completely cutting off supplies these military or dual-use products. President Putin held an online meeting with business representatives and officials attending the 8th Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russia, on September 12. Photo. Reuters. He said living standards in Russia may be declining but not as fast as expected, especially in big cities. In the provinces, falling living standards even prompted men to sign up to fight in Ukraine, where they could receive large salaries. Fedorov emphasized that the West should not place too much hope that the Russian economy will run out. This process is not happening fast enough, he said. There are many gaps in the West's current sanctions policy, commented Tom Keatinge, director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Research at the British Royal United Services Institute (RUSI). The first is the financial system, where banking channels for trading with Russia remain in the West, he said. It's very difficult for a bank in the West to know where a payment is going, Keatinge said. There is always a risk that an exported batch of drugs or similar goods could act as a cover for something more dangerous. In addition, some Russian economic sectors remain unsanctioned or cannot be punished. Diamonds are an example. Although the US and UK have imposed restrictions on Russian diamonds, the European Union (EU) continues to remove gems from its sanctions list. This allows Russia, the world's largest diamond producer, to continue accessing one of its key markets. Governments are trying to figure out how to close those loopholes in a way that doesn't have too big of an impact on their wallets, Keatinge commented. Keatinge noted that some trade with Russia is very difficult to cut, like the purchase of nuclear fuel. Media reported in August that Russia had earned hundreds of millions of dollars from selling nuclear fuel to the US and Europe, countries that are completely dependent on Moscow's supply. While he welcomed the scrutiny of what was missing from sanctions policy, Mark Harrison, emeritus professor of economics at Warwick University, said it was important that the West acted. The real purpose is to increase costs for Russia by forcing them to adapt. Blocking the Russian economy is impossible, he said. What we can do is continue to make it more expensive for Moscow to connect with the rest of the world. This is the end of the video. If you have any comments, please comment below the video. Julie would like to sincerely thank you and everyone for your interest in watching. Julie, best regards and see you again.